Engineering and Architecture. We're out of Oregon City, or I work in the Oregon City office. We're headquartered down in Klamath Falls. We have 4 offices around the state, and we do a lot of work in school. And we specifically do a lot of seismic retrofits. And that's why I'm here today to kind of tell you guys a little bit about what's happened on this campus over the last year or so. Because you've probably already been able to tell that there's been some upgrades, some kind of a facelift to the building, and that's great. And that's definitely an improvement on the campus here. And I'll talk a little bit about that, but also what's kind of underneath that you don't see, that also is of great importance. Before we get into that, I wanted to kind of summarize what we've done and why we've done it. And to do that, I need to give you guys a little bit of background. So seismic activity is something that's kind of new to Oregon. For the longest time, earthquakes, something that was happening in California. It was not an issue here. And as science has kind of progressed, the geologists are realizing that there's been a history of earthquakes in Oregon and Washington, and they're also saying that we're overdue for a big earthquake. And some of the sciences, they can look at some of the earth sciences and actually see that there's been stuff that happened before really, people came to this area. There's signs of that. And so with the new building codes that are coming out, there's requirements to deal with seismic forces. And there's also a push and an incentive from the state government to fund some of that. And so that's one of the things that we're looking at doing. So there's really two big components to the damage that we see from earthquakes. One is obviously the structural damage, the collapse of the building, which is the primary thing that we want to avoid. But in addition to that, there's non-structural damage that can also be very devastating when ceilings, light fixtures, ventilation systems, all that kind of stuff can shake loose and fall on people inside the building and sometimes prevent people from exiting. So those are both concerns that were dealt with during the seismic retrofit that took place here in this building. Before we get to that specifically, I wanted to just briefly look at some of the code requirements and some of the performance objectives that are targeted for seismic retrofits. So it's really anything from what's noted here as collapse prevention, all the way up to fully operational. So what that means is that in some cases, all you're trying to do when you're strengthening a building is to prevent it from collapsing. In other cases, you're actually wanting to be to the point where people will evacuate during the earthquake, then immediately they can go back inside and everything will be operational. Lights will be on and you can, the kitchen will work and all that stuff. So for this particular seismic retrofit that we did at this building, the performance objective was immediate occupancy. So that means during an earthquake, you would evacuate the building, you would assess it, but there's a high likelihood that it would be you would be able to immediately occupy it. And the reason why that's critical in a community like this is you then have a place where people can assemble. People from the entire community come here, use this as a hub. There's obviously a cafeteria space, a kitchen. Now, with it being not operational but immediate occupancy, that means that maybe the lights aren't working. Maybe there's some other issues with just maybe there's not a heating system. But those are things that can be brought in and and at least the structure itself is safe to occupy, and that's important for an emergency shelter situation. So in this case, and for this project, the district actually took advantage of 2 different grants that were available. The first grant was a grant given by the Oregon Department of Education. It was a $25,000 grant to do seismic evaluations of some of your district buildings. That included this building and also some of the buildings at the high school. And out of that, we were able to put together a couple of different SRG, what's called SRG applications. It's applications to the seismic retrofit grant program. And so the first application was for 2.4 million, which the cap is 2.5 million. So it was just right underneath the cap of what they're allowed, what they give out as grants. And that was for the original building here, the 2 classroom wings and the cafeteria, and it included some space for the district offices. And that was awarded in May of 2020, and we worked. The district hired us to do the engineering and the architecture for that project, and we completed the design last spring, and the construction was done over this last summer, as I'm sure you remember. And this just kind of shows the team here. Obviously, we're working with the district, and Mackenzie Commercial was the contractor, and they were great to work with, and really did great work here, and the project turned out really well. Just to give you guys an idea of the kind of the limitations of the scope, it's this part here shown in red. The reason for that is in part the fact that we were at that grant limit. We couldn't really increase the scope of the project because it would exceed the cap that it had. The other reason is most of this building, as you know, is a much newer building. It's built around 2000, a couple years after 2002, 03, which means that it basically meets current code. So there's no need to seismically retrofit that area. And I wanted to show and touch on some of the things that we specifically did here, because like I mentioned, you can see that there's been some upgrades done on the siding and paint, and fresh coat or paint and all that stuff. But some of the things that we did was, which was part of the seismic retrofit, was strengthening the building by putting in plywood shear walls in specific areas around the building. So that's what's highlighted here in yellow. We had to infill some of the windows in the cafeteria. You couldn't really see it before because it was covered up by siding, but there was, you could see it from the inside. There's windows along both sides, which obviously windows have no strength in them in terms of seismic. So we filled in some of those and made the plywood shear walls go all the way up. And as part of that process, we were able to actually put in some new windows and get some daylight into that space, which I think is great. We put in new siding. The siding was in pretty bad shape throughout the building. There's a lot of rot and that kind of stuff. And so we were able to replace most, if not all, of the siding. There's one area in red here that used to be a stage that was just really used for storage. There wasn't really a whole lot going on in there. And I know your cafeteria is kind of at capacity. So one of the things we were able to do there was reconfigure that space and basically have it be an expanded part of the cafeteria. And so it's all at one level and can be used for to support that those activities there. Well, I guess one thing I didn't mention is when we did the new siding, we also did a lot of new insulation, which is great because that helps with energy efficiency and it just helps with overall comfort of the building. And the same is the case with the roof, which we'll get to in a second. Here are the classrooms. Similarly, we added a lot of shear walls, which are elements that stiffen the building and make it resist seismic loading. We had to upgrade the hallways quite a bit, and so they got a new lower ceiling, new light fixtures. And we infilled some of there was windows from the hallway into the classrooms. So a lot of those were infilled, so that we've got shear walls going all the way up to the roof. And again, new siding and new paint on the perimeter here.
Chris, may I ask a question on that last slide?
Yes, absolutely.
It looks like on the outside of the classroom, like the exterior walls, most of them are not yellow. Does that mean they were already pretty good with sheer walls, or is the fact that you filled in the windows? And
so those infills, so it's the yellow and blue work together. So those are actually both shear walls, but one was the yellow is where there were already walls, and so we took the finishes off down to studs and put plywood up and then new finishes. And the blue lines are where there were windows. And so that's one thing we oftentimes see for buildings of this vintage and even a little bit newer. They used to have a ton of windows in the classrooms, which is great for natural light and all that, but it doesn't allow for any stiffness or any seismic strength. So what we normally would do is what we did here is infill. Basically, you just take out one of those windows or like a portion of the windows so that we can get full height shear wall panel in. And that's what all those blue lines are there.
Okay, thank you.
I would also add though that when siding was added to those outside walls, insulation was put in, and I can give you a real world example of, okay, back to that. When we had that hard freeze, the first hard freeze where it was down to the teens and 20s, normally, and all realistically, we would have to turn water on, have dripping water in those faucets because all the pipes run along the outside to keep pipes from freezing. That was just a regular thing we'd have to do. This year, we didn't have to do that. They insulated those walls well enough with the new siding. We didn't have to drip water in every classroom to keep the pipes from freezing.
That's sweet.
So that's a real world
Yeah,
solution.
yeah, that's fantastic.
The other cool thing is, where we had those blue sections and the yellow sections, like I said, we would take, specifically for the yellow exterior sections, we would take the siding off down to the studs. So we put back insulation in. But everywhere else where we were actually leaving what we call the sheathing, which is what's underneath the siding. In many places, we left that in place. And so the contractor just drilled holes in that and blew in loose insulation throughout. So basically all the walls, whether we were touching them for shear walls, for putting, for strengthening, or we were just replacing the siding, we were able to insulate all of those walls and get all of that to be firmly, performing better. Well, a big advantage of this kind of work is that as part of the process, we needed to strengthen the roof. And the roof that was here was in pretty bad shape. And so it gives the district an opportunity to completely replace the roof because it's structurally necessary for the seismic improvements that we need to do. So we took off the roofing and then took down to the existing sheathing and put new insulation, which we brought up to current code for insulation. The old insulation that was on there was like an inch.
It was ridiculous.
An inch of insulation we put back, I think it was 6 inches.
Yeah.
Back there. Quite a big difference. And then a brand new roof, obviously, which a roof like that will serve the district for the next 20 years, if not longer. So that's a big deal. Have some before and after pictures just kind of to see how to see how drastic the change was here between the old and the new. So just I guess to clarify, the grant paid for the majority of the work. The district did put in a little bit of money, specifically because all the siding wasn't necessarily covered by the grant because we were looking at initially just patching the siding as best we could because there wasn't really enough money to replace all of the siding as part of what we were looking at. But obviously it was a good opportunity for the district just to chip in a little bit and get a lot of bang for the buck in terms of replacing that siding and doing it the right way rather than just trying to patch it back. And so obviously it's a major difference.
It's hard to say it actually looks that bad.
What's amazing is
there
there were several sections just in that one picture. You can't see it because the siding's still there, but if the siding had been off, there was at least 2 sections in that picture alone in the old where there was dry rot, serious dry rot. That was absolutely 100% repaired before the new siding was put up. That's something we wouldn't have caught or been able to capture. So just like the roof lasting another 20 years, similar to here, that's a big, huge deal.
Yeah. And even the windows that we know into the gym, you see those in any picture. Awesome.
Yeah, and the siding that was here before, it was standing seam board and bat cedar, which cedar holds up pretty good, but this is was cedar that had probably been there
From the.
from the beginning, so it's been there like 60, 70 years. So you can tell at the bottom of the siding, it was starting to rot pretty bad, and that was consistent throughout the building. And so what the replacement, you can see that it has board and bat on the top, but then it has lap siding on the bottom, and there's a couple of benefits for that. One is it's easier to replace, because if you do have any kind of issues with deterioration, you can just get rid of the very bottom and replace that pretty easily. The other benefit is that this is hardy plank, so it's not wood, it's what a lot of people use on their houses, right? It's a siding material that doesn't rot, it doesn't really deteriorate, it holds up really well. And you technically, I don't even think you have to really maintain the paint other than, aesthetically, you want to do that probably, but it's something that it will hold up way better than the old siding, which obviously the old siding did its job. It was there for 80 years, but it was definitely looking a little bit sad towards the end. There's kind of a before and after the hallways. I know one of the concerns that teachers brought up is that there's quite a bit of noise coming through from the classroom, from the hallway into the classroom, because of it basically just has a bunch of single pane windows. Now, we couldn't afford to get rid of all of those, but by putting dropping a ceiling down a little bit lower, it does help with the acoustics. I'm not sure if teachers have mentioned.
Actually, yeah, we got pretty good feedback.
Yeah, because that does make a big difference. And obviously new energy efficient lighting there. And you can't really see it on this one, but there was ducts for the ventilation system that we were able to tuck up and above the ceilings instead of, at least maybe not in this corridor, but the other corridor had them exposed.
We're also saving money with energy because everything got insulated. And so there's a lot of heat loss in that old hallway, a lot of heat loss. And so that was addressed with this new hallway remodel, and our energy savings is pretty good.
And we did do quite a bit of painting throughout, so yeah. Just a little, some fresh paint there. This might not be the best pictures to see, to really capitalize on what happened here with the, we got these new windows in, so we got a lot more daylight coming in. And then towards the end of that space, you can see that what used to be the stage is now an area that can be used for the cafeteria there. Here's some pictures of the installation, how that went in. So obviously you can see the new bat installation there, and then all these holes that you see in the walls. That was where they injected the blue red insulation. That's really go back to that's kind of the story of what happened over the last year and a half, 2 years at this campus. Any questions or anything that anyone wants to know about that? So as I mentioned, that one grant from ODE covered an evaluation for the high school as well. And on behalf of the district, we submitted another grant application. And this last spring, the district was awarded another grant to do basically the same thing we did here at the high school gymnasium. So that is the next step for the district. Really the next thing that the district needs to do. This is kind of the list of like some of the scope that includes. It's gonna most likely end up being a new roofing at the original gym, new siding of the gym, some new interior finishes in some of the locker rooms in some specific areas, strengthening of the blue lamp beams. And then there's some scope included for the auxiliary gym, the newer gym, but mostly because that's a newer gym, the structure is good, but like I was talking about earlier, where there's the structural damage that we're concerned with, and then the non-structural damage. In that space, there's more of the non-structural stuff that we want to deal with. So ductwork, just making sure that lighting and ceilings are braced and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the scope there. The next step for the district is to hire an engineer or an architect to do that part of the project. And I believe Joel is working on getting a request for proposals together so that right, that can hit the street and you guys can select.
We're gonna follow a similar timeline. We have 2 years to spend the money, and so to do anything this summer would be basically, we couldn't meet that timeline, because you have to have the engineering group. It takes a good, 9 months, I think.
Yeah, it takes about 9 months to a year to design it, and then
So
4 or 5 months. To build.
exactly. So if we get the RFP out in the next 30 days, 40 days, give or take, you'd be doing the design work, engineering work like we did for this building this coming summer, with the construction occurring the following summer. And that would be the last summer that we can do it. We have until October of 2024 to spend the money. So we meet that deadline, just like we did for this one. And so, and then just as an FYI, the high school is considered architecturally several buildings. There's a building A, building B, and building C. I think there's a building D too. And so this is, I believe, building B. And the reason that this was picked out over the other facilities is that you referenced this as well, is that immediate occupancy and emergency shelter. So typically a gym is a space where you're going to put emergency services into. If you had an incident occur in the community, an earthquake occurred, and our facilities are listed as emergency services sanctuaries, places people can go for safety. So a gym is going to be that place, because the locker room's there, you have the ability to help people and house people and what have you. So anyway, that's why the gym was selected as the first, but we could also potentially go and look at the other ones and apply for grants for those other sections of those other buildings as well. But the gym is building B, and building A is the academic wing, building C is the vocational building. And I think building D is actually greenhouse, it's a standalone building.
And the commons is technically part of the gym.
Yes.
So I have a question. Is there like a seismic range? Maybe this isn't the way to that this can withstand. Is there like a range that, like, as you're making these improvements, you can take from this magnitude to this magnitude, we're in the clear, but maybe above this magnitude? I mean,
So, yeah, that's a good question. So generally, when we're looking at this seismic hazard, it's not necessarily for one specific earthquake at one specific location. It's a probabilistic approach using, statistics and all this and the geology of the site. But really what comes into play is, like I just mentioned earlier, there's what we're really mostly worried about in Oregon is what's called the Cascadia subduction zone, which is a big earthquake that's going to happen off the coast. And there's a geologic record of this event taking place last time about 300 years ago. And prior to that, it was like almost like clockwork. Every 300 to 500 years, there was this event. Now that's, 100 miles off the coast, which, from here, that's probably, 200 miles or something like that, 250 miles. So that is one of the earthquakes that we have to design for. And that earthquake is probably going to be a 9.0 earthquake. But that's, the epicenter is, like I said, like 250 miles from here. So there might actually be other smaller earthquakes that are closer that would potentially cause more damage. So we have to look at all of the different faults that happen, because there might be a fault, 10 miles away that would cause a 6.0. That might be worse than the 9.0 that's 200 miles away, if that makes sense. So generally what we typically say is we're expecting a 9.0 to happen in Oregon. It's going to affect different parts of the state differently. And like I said, there's other, in terms of recent seismic activity, there's been one of the more famous ones was one that happened in Klamath Falls in like 93, 94. I think that was a 6.5-ish, damaged some buildings pretty significantly, some of the old buildings down there. Just a couple of years ago, there was an earthquake in Ontario, Oregon, that caused some damage on one of their school buildings. But again, that was like maybe a 5 or a 6. So they're usually pretty small around here, but there is a potential for a really big one. And when that happens, that's really what that's what we're gearing up for essentially.
yeah, I think we're kind of in a hot spot, right? Like we have the Cascadia zone out there, and then we have like a volcanic range on the other side of it. So
Right.
that's what I was going to ask you, if there was like a range, or if it was specific to, if we were just saying, okay, this is kind of range that we know that this will hold up, we'll be
Yeah, well, so it meets, it basically, it doesn't meet the building code for a brand new building. Because that, nobody ever expects you to retrofit a building up to new building code standards, but there's I believe it's, 70 or 75% of that is what the existing building retrofit is for. And that's beyond what most earthquakes are around here. But it should be able to withstand that 9.0. That's really the target.
All right.
I guess
Well,
to
that's
put
good
it
news.
simply, but again, that's a 9.0 that's quite a ways away. So the forces that, a coastal school would have would be way worse than here. So you guys can comfort yourselves with that, maybe.
No one from the school.
We did work on this. Yeah, we did work out at the coast too, and yeah, all the forces that we deal with are higher up there just because of the seismicity. It increases as you get closer to the coast. I guess I should mention real quick, we did help you guys put together a mailer. There's a couple of pages that can be folded up and sent out to households in the district so that people know what's going on and kind of basically give a brief. It's a kind of a brief version of the presentation I just gave that has like pictures and some stuff, just so that the community is involved and understand what has been happening and why. And I understand as we see these projects go through it can be kind of disruptive for the staff and for the students at times. That's why we try to limit our construction window to the summers so that it's least impact, but unfortunately it bleeds over a little bit into the school year sometimes. And there's definitely some adjusting that needs to happen with that, and we appreciate people's patience with that. And hopefully people understand that in the end, we're doing it to make the building safer and make it a safer place for kids to be and for the staff for that matter. So yeah, that's why we do what we do.
I want to add that this is not actually part of the package that we paid for. Mike and I just asked if they'd be willing to come down and do a presentation, and they stepped up and they created these and did this for us. And I think that speaks well to their organization, speaks well to the operation we have with them. So we're a pleasure to work with, and I appreciate the fact that they came down and did this for us.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
The work is beautiful. We love the way the building looks. We love knowing that our kids are gonna be safe in it. So thank you so much for helping with it. And thank you for helping submit the second grant for us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like Joel said, after that one, there'll be another one. The state just keeps handing out money. So we'll take it, right?
Help us get it.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming down with us. Yeah, feel free to take off. You don't have to.
Yeah, okay.
All righty. Our next presentation, two of our most favorite people. Tony and Sherry. Thanks for meeting Steve. Yeah, you want to talk through our service plan?
Sure, I'll do that, but first to make sure that we introduce the favorite person, Sherry Tickets. We have a 7-member board at Lane ESD, and 5 of them are elected to be the zones, and Sherry happens to be elected from this zone, so it has very good representation from the Lane ESD school board. For the local service plan presentation, I just wanted to kind of gauge I don't know if you got it electronically or not. Okay, and if you'd like a hard copy, I brought some hard copies if you'd like that. So, okay, good. I will. That's 10 minutes. Johnson, help me with that. I don't know how crucial it is that you read all this right now tonight, so maybe later. I will tell you that there are not tons of changes in this local service plan from what those of you who are veteran board members may have known of our services from before. There is a change in terms of this is kind of the start of a 2-year service cycle. Many years ago, superintendents voted to try to match the biennium cycle. So this is actually a plan that would go into effect at the start of the 2023-24 school year and potentially run through the 24-25 school year. We do have the responsibility of bringing this back every year, though, even though it's a 2-year plan. There may still be small breaks in the middle, and even if there aren't, we still are required to start the school boards for voting. There are things in here that fit with what ESD's call is in the state of Oregon. We are still in the state school fund. 4.5% of the funding goes to the 19 ESDs in the state. And out of that 4.5% that we get, actually it's less than 4.5% of our portion, but 90% of what we receive needs to be spent in services to our 16 school districts here in Lynn County. And those services fall into four main categories: administrative and business services, technology services, school improvement services, and our biggest department, special education services. And that's still where most of the services that we provide for the Creswell School District fall are within the special education fund. In fact, just down the hall here, we've got a classroom here, Crest Lane, that's your building, mostly your students, and Lane ESD staff. And the same at Creswell Middle School, we've got a classroom there. So we really appreciate the partnership in allowing our folks to come in and run our classrooms within the buildings. We just get closer to our rural students, Creswell students. So special education still remains the biggest feature of what we offer. As far as any changes there, the only thing I'd say is that our special ed department has grown. The Springfield School District this school year, last year decided to switch the operations of their 4 elementary schools also over to ESD. It was a little bit of a challenge for us because last year, as we were looking at trying to make sure we were well staffed to run safe classrooms for our students, we weren't able to meet the safety mark of where we think thought we needed to be to make sure we ran school every single day. So we had some days that were cut out last year's calendar. None of us were happy about that. We went really hard in terms of recruiting and retaining. By the end of the year, we were back to 5 days a week. And this year, I'm really happy. It sounds like no big deal, but we've been running 5 days a week, full school this entire year, and plan to keep doing so. We're more staff now than we've been in all the prior years that have been here. So really strong effort on the part of our HR folks, our special ed folks, and good service for our kids. So and outside of that, there are some other things that are kind of fairly new, but not completely new. I don't know if I mentioned these since I've been in person, since we've run some videos sometimes. But the Student Success Act, you're implementing the student investment account in your community, getting input from your community, and trying to meet the needs of students in some areas where we get some more resources to do that. The ESD also has a Student Success Act comprehensive plan to support your efforts, and that's at the end of that document. At the end of that packet are those services that we're providing within the Student Success Act. That's outside the state school fund. It's a little different than that, but it's still under the operations of ESD still. And I think the most recent of that is that the Oregon Department of Education has tasked us with providing technical assistance in terms of the integrated guidance, where your superintendent, your central business officers, or your central office will need to coordinate and consolidate the reports. The idea is to make it simpler, to take all these various reports and take them into one. I don't know if it's actually simple yet. And the idea is we're trying to get it to the point where there'll be one report. It's also that we're looking to not only provide the technical assistance, but there's the possibility, at least in the short run, trying to get the legislature with this, to carry on some actual physical writing of reports to take that out of the hands of some of our central office folks, and especially in middle and small size districts. The intent of that money coming from ODE is not so much to take it out of the hands of 4J or Springfield and people, but it's districts the size of Creswell that have a person or just a couple people to do that in addition to their other 4-year programs. So we're close to that. We're really close. Maybe a couple days ago, hiring that integrated guidance person. We've had people that outside of their responsibility, we're about ready to land somebody with that responsibility, and then they would oversee that person who actually do the report, right? So Michael, close. Yeah. Could hear an announcement by next week.
Good, we're close to the deadline.
Yes, the technical assistance and maybe more practical assistance. I don't know if I've got much else to add at this point. I've got to open up for some questions. Yeah.
Not a question, but a fun comment. Page 24, your photo. That's my son that graduated from Creswell. So yeah, I was going through this and I'm like. Great opportunity. That was part of it.
We make sure every district does it. Let Julie. I mentioned best class, that's some efforts that we've been able to put into play in the summer. We're hoping to expand on those, but there have been some opportunities for students at LCC through grants like Med Class, we can the summer program, also some well and some audible programs that we did offer actually last 2 summers, and we hope it was going to maybe expand. There's been a little change in leadership. I think we're communicating. We want to see that continue. We hope to do that. We have confidence.
Tony, with the technology piece, this may not be a lane ESD question, so it may be more of an insurance one. Who helps us if our data is stolen or hacked or held for hostage, right? That's becoming like something every week in the news, a smaller and smaller entity, because they're going after the smaller entities because we don't have the infrastructure.
Yes, they're
for
going after.
network protection.
And they're going after schools because we're very trusted and we also hold the line to really valuable information.
Yeah.
Not schools. So a few years ago, one of the new features of local service that I believe was maybe 3 years ago. So part of the plan is that the Lane ESD does employ a kind of a security person, a technology security person. It doesn't, I won't say that it creates a spot where we would be able to provide putting everything backwards, is to try to increase the awareness of folks who are, sitting down at laptops or on computers, email of certain schemes that would be attempts to get in. Also looking at the physical structure and how the wiring things are set up to provide advice on how to best configure things to limit the risk or minimize the risk. There's no way I can say that we completely get rid of the risk, but so we have the third and fourth year now that somebody in a position that's advising districts on that. As far as if data is stolen or if it's held for ransom, that becomes more of an insurance thing for if data does disappear. It has some districts where that's happened, not so much from maybe more from a virus or something else. We've been able to step in and try to do our best to reclaim some of that, but there's no kind of disappearance. We do that for others.
Thank you.
It's a big issue around the state. The amount of insurance to cover it completely is huge. And so I don't know if there's any consolidated effort that we can go into, we could maybe help with that cost a little bit. I think our tech folks would be exploring that, but so far it's all on our own. It's expensive. No, that's one of the things is it's not the level of coverage that is often is not. It's what it needs to be. Joel, we'll work about the numbers in that.
Thank you.
The only other thing I guess I'd add is that the superintendents did approve this back at the December meeting. Our board just recently, last Tuesday night, passed this, and it's now in the hands of our school districts, and we just would be asking for some action by March 1st, doesn't have to be like sometime before March 1st.
And with it being a 2-year plan, are you looking for a 2-year approval or a 1-year approval still?
Even though we structure it this kind of 2 years,
Okay.
it's still a legal requirement to do that. And
Thank you.
we don't have to do the second.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. Thanks. We're happy to see Mike around too. And I know Lacey's still in there. Tim may be coming. Just thank you for the connection. They like seeing you, Mike.
Any questions for Tony or Sherry? Is anybody comfortable with making a motion to approve the plan?
And move to approve resolution 2223-01, the local service plan for 2023. There's 2025.
I second that. Okay, all right. Any questions on the motion or any further discussion?
I'd just like to add a comment that I've been going to meetings for several years now, and it's very well run, and I really like what I hear when I go to those meetings, and every once in a while I'll have a presentation that one will never forget. They really do a lot with the kids. It's amazing. It's a great organization. I didn't get paid to say that.
You're gonna pay later, by the way.
There's a couple strokes. and
Are you gonna say it?
There you go.
Whatever disclosure form.
All in favor, raise your hand. Fantastic, that's unanimous. There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome to hang out with us. You're welcome to leave if you've got family waiting at
We'll
home.
wait till after the superintendent.
Thank you.
Alright, that is up to you, Mike. You.
Okay, well, you see my report is I'm updating you on strategic plan and where we're at with that. We've completed phase one, we're now in phase two and moving to phase three, so things are, well, some folks that might think it's moving a little slow, but we really are making a lot of progress here in a hurry. It's looking really good. We're at the point where we've developed a vision. Well, we're close. We have a draft for the portrait of a graduate. And we made some decisions on portrait of a graduate. And this is the vision. This is the product. This is what we're after. The portrait of a graduate. But we've made some changes. One thing that, I mean, there's a lot on this visual. One change for certain that's gonna happen on this visual, everything else is kind of in the air. But portrait of a graduate is going to be development of a CSD graduate, because we want the representation in our visual of the vision to be K-12. And so we landed on the development of a CSD graduate rather than the portrait of a high school graduate. And so when we look at this with the end in mind, we're backwards mapping everything in our school improvement plan, our continuous improvement plan for district and schools, with all of these attributes embedded in and articulated in K-12. And then when we get to the actual SIP plan or the vision of improvement for our school district, within all of these themes, we embedded activities or strategies to get to these attributes. So that's how the vision will work. That's how we're developing it. And so anyway, that's where we're at with that. You saw the other list of activities that I named there that I participated in, but the absolute highlight of December was working with the school board to haul all of those gifts for the season of giving from all over this building into this room here to set up the giveaway to the families. And we just happen to have the star attraction here, the celebrity of the event, Catherine Dumas is here from the FRC, our Family Resource Center coordinator, and she's prepared to give some highlights to really enhance my report for you. So, let's hear you, Catherine.
Well, thank you guys so much for helping do all those and get me out of here before midnight. That's much appreciated. Okay, so for our season giving program this year, we served 266 kids coming from 97 families. We were also able to donate a huge box of like 80 to 100 toys to the food pantry. So on the Thursday before Christmas, when they came through to get their food boxes, if they had kids, they also got to pick out an extra toy. We also donated toys to the library, which is great. They're going to use those for their summer reading program. And then because of our partnership with Ride United, we were able to deliver to 12 families. It usually would have been me in my tiny car going around at like 10 o'clock on Friday, and I didn't have to. Ride United came by and delivered during school hours, so their kids were gone, and nobody knows that anyone else but parents bought those gifts. We collaborated with 5 local churches, a whole bunch of local businesses and community members, Toys for Tots, and I wanted to highlight one of our local businesses, Emerald Valley Dental, and Dr. B there. He bought 6 beds for 2 families whose kids were sleeping on the floor. And so that was school, like, hey, this family said they needed beds on their application, and they were like, oh yeah, we got that, we already got them, we're done, and we're gonna deliver them too. So that was really, really cool. And I think that's it. I did want to mention, so in 2021, we served 223 kids from 89 families. So we definitely increased this year, and it has been a steady increase since I started in 2019. Yeah, so, yeah, it's an awesome program. I love it. Thank you guys for your help. And yeah, anybody have any questions or?
I think I'll speak for me, but I think the rest of the board will echo. If you need logistical help with the program, I know some of the information is probably confidential, so we don't want family shared, but if you need help with any kinds of logistical stuff that we can do, feel free to put the call out anytime. I'm sure many of us will show up.
That sounds great. I would love it. And yeah, you're right. A lot of it is confidential, and that's one point I make to families is like, when you apply, it's me seeing this. That's me. I'm not sharing it. Like, your teacher's not gonna know. People you come in and do IU meetings with, they're not gonna, like, it's me. So that I try to keep really, really confidential. But after all the numbers are in, like, you're not a family, you're a number, and anyone can know who you are, and it won't matter. So yes, after that, I would love and appreciate the help. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you for being here tonight, Catherine.
Of course.
Any questions on the activities or any of the other information on the report? I'll give more information on the strategic planning update in probably 2 minutes after we get past this agenda item.
All right, if we're good on superintendent's report, the public comment, stated earlier that we have no one registered here, and no virtual comment either. So we will keep going with next item.
Why not? Be careful. So, vision update. The steering committee has completed several revisions of the portrait of a graduate, and as I explained, we wanted to have a visual that demonstrated the continuum from K-12. So the title will be development of a CSD graduate, and the attributes will be embedded and articulated through K-12. The continuous improvement plan, we also have that draft vision that I showed you. And that's where the continuous improvement plan is required by the state for that integrated application that Tony was talking about to get our $2.5 million in grants from ODE. We have to complete this continuous improvement plan to submit with the integrated application to get those funds. So we're well on our way with that. The visual we'll start working on in the steering committee once we finish the visual for the district improvement plan. We'll begin working on that vision as soon as we've completed graduate development of a graduate vision. And this will be completed in the next steering committee meeting. We're pretty sure.
No problem.
I would agree.
And it's not because of us.
It's not because
Definitely not.
it has been a highlight.
We have a lot of discussion.
Very entertaining.
It's very entertaining. Yeah,
I think we can get it done.
yeah, we'll get it done. And we have a good draft of the CSD vision themes for our strategic plan for improvement, so that won't take us too long, I think. Anyway, so then the plan itself will now be developed. The action plan to achieve those themes will now be developed with the district leadership team, aka DLT, formerly the A team, or now the DLT team. The design team of the strategic planning process provided both steps as a recommendation for beginning the action plans towards achieving the theme. The DLT team has been researching strategies, programs, and educational best practices to achieve the themes with both steps in mind. Here are I have some examples for you of what we're doing with each theme and the bold steps that were presented to us by that design team. So overall wellness, two areas were mentioned there through the design team and also the feedback we got from the community. One, very loud and clear, had to do with nutrition and our food that we serve in our cafeterias. Loud and clear, kids. Number one, right there with turf. Food, turf. And so nutrition is something that we've been working diligently at because we've been hearing it, speculative of it for the last year, but this year, we saw it coming through really strong, so got started on that from the get-go. And Chanel's been working on that with researching food provider programs. We have one, but there are several out there. But we've also been looking at scratch food programs and how to prepare our own food here, which can be healthier, can be tastier, can have more variety. So we've been exploring that as an option. And we actually have an assessment of our facilities to be able to provide scratch cooking here, scratch preparation. So you'll hear more about that as we turn the corner in February. We met with, well, Chanel had conversations with people, but together we've met with scratch food provider program representatives, and they're very excited. And we've talked with our folks from food service throughout the district, and they're very excited. It's change, so change means there's a little bit of risk involved, or one can take it that way, but this is all for the better, especially for our kids. And then we're looking at mental health, medical assistance, dental assistance, and other community service programs. And what came through the design team was a hub of a service center, a hub that provided all these services for our families and students. And so we've been pursuing a school-based health center. That's the vision that we have to address that need and have a center with a one-stop shopping for all services. So people don't have to go to Cottage Grove to get medical or dental assistance. We can get it here. They don't have to go to the high school to find what services are there. It would all be located in one central location. So school-based health center. Those are the two areas that we're really focused on and we're researching right now. And with the school-based health center, space is the issue. So how do we create the space in our existing buildings or build a new health center, school-based health center for our students? We prefer in building, and this being the larger building, the space in this building. And our community knows, most of our community is here, our kids, but our other schools are really close, so it makes sense. Any question on that one? Comment? No.
It'd be great to have a health center.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we brought kids to Cottage Grove to do that kind of system. We don't really need to. We can set up a dental office here. And other things, or FRC could be located in there, so parents can access the FRC program. You know, I mean, it can all be arranged. Life prepared career pathways, big stuff there. So one area that we're looking at is how we provide a rigorous scope of activities for our students to research experience and learn about careers that interest them. And our high school has been working on that. Mary's familiar with it. They've been bringing in some new ideas in their scope and sequence of career planning and job searches. And so they're working down those lines and there's a lot to do there. I mean, it's just endless, but once you get going, then you start seeing the things that are possible and how you can build into that. And so that's one way we're looking at that immediately without long-term costs. Another way is a CTE hub. And a career center that would provide experiences for our students in auto and diesel mechanics, also the way we're moving to electronic vehicles, also technicians that can work on the electronic component of servicing auto and diesel vehicles. Aviation, culinary arts, welding, business administration, technology development and maintenance for computers, automobiles, etc., digital arts, engineering, architecture, and construction. These programs would provide job skills training and college now credits for CSD students and other district students. Now that's out of the box, other districts. The vision would also include evening classes to be available for out-of-district students and our young adult students, so young parents that need to get into some support program or career pathway. And they're still in school, but they're young parents. And so if we have evening classes, they're working in the day, or during the day, going to school during the day, then we have the option of evening classes. Also, when we're thinking about other districts and how we could be a hub, a CPE hub for careers, how can we provide opportunities for outside, for students from other school districts, especially here on the south end of Lane County, where they can take courses here. And we can provide the opportunities for them to do that during the day. And for those that have full loads during the day or athletics, or what have you in the evening. And maybe that's, for some of them, one Friday evening, maybe it's a Friday evening and a Saturday morning, or something. But if it's really out there, but we have people that really have challenges getting engaged in these programs. And so we have to think of where we can meet them, make it happen.
Mike, can I ask, make a comment about that? There was a partnership in Eastern Oregon amongst several school districts that did something like this, and it worked really effectively. What they did is they partnered with, like us, let's say Pleasant Hill and Cottage Grove. Each facility had their own unique, like one had a welding day, and then one had a section where they were learning to work specifically, let's say, on tractors. And students would swap schools specifically for that course, and it was super successful. I don't know if you guys have ever heard about this, but it worked really, really well. So you guys are on something, because what it did is it provided opportunities for students within a school district specifically through partnership with other districts. And they got college credit for it, and then even some community job placements in that. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard about this, but I was at a conference and I saw like a year ago, and they were talking about the success rates of the program. So I know you said it's kind of like out there. It's kind of genius in my opinion, because I've heard that it can be successful, but it does take the right kind of partnership, and transportation can often be kind of a barrier, I think, but we're close enough to some of these other kind of South Lane schools and things like that. I think you guys are on to something. So I'm not part of that committee, and I don't know the train of thought, but for any of you guys that are, do know that there are districts in Oregon that have done it and been successful.
Yeah, there are opportunities. I joined the committee 4 years ago before we went into COVID, and that committee was looking at opportunities to build these CPE programs within Lane County as a $30 million grant. And in talking about how we could get kids engaged in these CPE programs, location, geography was the issue. And, I said, hey, we'll be glad to have the other, for South Lane County over here in Creswell. Anyway, it started a conversation, and LCC has continued with the conversation, not specifically, but down those lines. And so looking at programs like engineering and architecture and how we could link up to LCC or the Benton Community College and into OSU, into their engineering program. Those are the kinds of things where you have two higher education programs pulling, and you're presenting or providing the opportunity. It has a long life. long as you can have those connections as an option for your kid. There are endless possibilities if you build it. And so that's the vision. Just build
I
it.
think that's great.
Thank you.
So I think that's a really positive movement based on the feedback we got from students on what they were wanting. I don't know, like that full connection, that's a really strong answer, in my opinion, to what the community and the students are saying they need. So I think you guys, I think that's great.
That partnership in Eastern Oregon, is that favorite technical institute? Or is that a different?
Well, I can go back, I know I have my notes on it, I'll go back, at the time, it wasn't. It was a collaboration of a couple of people in the community who were hiring students and saw a need. And they approached the district, and it actually was a grassroots program, so I don't think it is.
Okay,
That
doesn't sound like how BTI got started, but it's super successful.
no, but,
Okay,
yeah, it was, might have even been longer than that, I forgot about COVID, because I was at a physical conference and they presented on their program.
COVID doesn't time one.
Yeah, and a little bit, I thought maybe it was like 6 years ago. Or something.
Couple, but you know, forget all crazy. Okay.
Gather the memory. It's like this. Dark place. Where was it? Where were we? Where was it? Any more questions or comments on that one thing? Another thing that rang true was the state-of-the-art facilities, and when we're talking about state-of-the-art facilities, we can be like, wow, you know, the kingdom, you know, the $100 million deal, but when you boil it down to really what our community and our kids are saying to us, it wasn't the state-of-the-art, it's the 21st century facilities. Can we have things that other schools have that we don't have? I mean, how?
Can we have a shop that functions? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. And so when they're thinking state of the art, they're thinking adequate.
Yeah.
You know, can we have adequate accommodations to do what's needed to prepare for the future?
Yeah.
And so in looking at it that way, we are prioritizing in listening from the community. There's also other areas where this information comes from. So one of the areas is this long range facilities plan that came out of the work that happened in 1819 that rolled into the 1920 to the TAP grant, which then we've been able to use that long range facilities assessment for all of these grants that have to do with improvements on these buildings. So we are prioritizing the facilities repairs or replacement items identified in the long range planning assessment. That's one. Critical repairs like roofs on the high school and CES and safety issues like floors, electrical panels, and lighting that need replaced. And the items identified by the community through the strategic planning process and community-wide needs assessment. Most of what was pointed out to us in the needs assessment, we're already aware of because the facilities are so deteriorated. Those same things came up in the long-range facility plan in 1819, the assessment. And so the turf or the field at the high school, the track, those things are all identified because they're just so far beyond their life expectancy. They're not safe. And so what the kids are saying, state of the art, really is, can we have stuff that's conducive to what we need to do, whether it's in the classroom or outside the classroom? It's not good. Do good for us, that they're saying. And it really came to us from the voice of the kids the most. They wanted to make sure we heard these comments about the facilities. The parents came in loud and clear, and the staff also came in. You have all your stakeholder groups that came through with this information. So to accomplish all that has been identified by the needs assessment, the long-range facilities plan, and long range, by the way, isn't 30 years away, 30 years out. That was 5 years ago that assessment was conducted, and our facilities in this school and that school were identified as deteriorated. So,
I want to ask a question, maybe everyone else knows it. We've seen the long range facility plan.
Yeah, it was, when it was given as a report by me in 2019,
Yeah.
in December 2019. It's, if I can easily send it to you.
Yeah, I'd love to.
It's a very lengthy document, but it's well worth the read. It might be a snoozer to some, but,
So can you send that to me too, just because I don't.
oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So it's about a 200-page document because it's two documents in one. It's the assessment and you have a long-range planning,
Mhm.
but yeah.
so to accomplish that, what was identified in that plan, and we got a second, and also through the strategic planning process in 1920, and also this one that we just completed here this year, 2019-20, and this one this fall. We need to explore funding beyond state school funding. And we looked into some other options out there, but it's not at the level, the funding's there, but it's not at the level of what it would take to accomplish all that's out there in front of us with this. Any questions on that?
Question, I'm just listening.
Okay. Nothing? Okay. Fluent readers, that's our last thing. And interesting, out of Eastern Oregon, there's a program that's just been developed there, and it's called Read Together. Eastern Oregon University is formerly a teaching institution, and mostly focused on early childhood development. And so when you're an educator, go through that program, you're in education training with the early, with the littles, preschool and up to second, third grade. And so Ackerman Elementary is on the campus, and a lot of families send their kids to Ackerman Elementary. Ackerman has put together a program, and they brought in some other organizations to assist them with this. But this Read Together program, they develop these videos in-house that they send to parents, and parents of birth to 5 can watch these videos and then teach their kids these techniques for reading. I mean, before they're even born, they have these activities that the parents can get into to help develop a system, a rhythm of reading with their kids to prepare them for K-12 and beyond. And so I was talking with Eric Kohlenberg about this today, and the possibilities of bringing that program in. This is what was identified through the strategic planning process, was having kids learn literacy or reading at home before they get to kindergarten. And so having the IRC develop these 2-minute videos, like what has been developed in Eastern Oregon through POU, then we can have those available on our website, and parents can go in and get these 2-minute videos on how to teach these habits of reading or what have you to my kids at home. But I mean, if you can really kind of put that in its place, how would parents know to do? I mean, I wouldn't even know how to teach my kid how to get into a rhythm of reading. And so, I mean, these are really groundbreaking for literacy. And so Eric was excited about it, and I think the IRC would be too. So we're going to explore that program and try to bring in some early reading in our community for the means to have that happen. And then the last one is meet students' needs. Students want electives, clubs, and programs, as well as supports, interventions to engage them and support them in their school life. That's what we've heard from them. We heard from their parents too. Beginning with the CTE hub at CHS and a CTE facility at CMS, that would be a great start. However, those other suggestions that came through the surveys, they do not include CTE programs. They're things that we could consider within our means currently. So we don't have to build a center for them or go out and buy a program for them. We can find a way to facilitate the clubs or study halls or after school tutoring or something of that nature, which is what they asked for. These identified courses and programs will be examined by the DLP as we develop our SIP for the next 3 to 5 years. So we have a full list of those things that they've identified.
We had plenty of clubs at the high school. Are we missing a few like niche areas?
It's, things change and students' needs or interests change. And we don't know if we don't serve that.
Sure.
So
So we don't necessarily have an example of what they asked for.
FFA,
There's like a DECA Skills USA,
Yeah.
so within that umbrella of those CT, so we have COSA and we have FBLA, right? But there are, what's really cool too is when you go to a conference for things like COSA for the leadership conference, they're from all of those umbrella programs. So you'll have leadership from Skills USA, from FFA, from FBLA, and COSA, all the leaders from the state will be there. And so a lot of our students are very aware that there are other factions of that, and it would be the thing that they're interested in.
Sure.
But you do have to have an advisor, and you have to have somebody who can learn kind of the competitive program, like the competitions from FBLA, now high school to that, in a week or two. So, but yeah, there's definitely more that we could, as a district, probably.
there's other things
That's a
like
good example. Thank you.
arts club, photography club, those things that, within journalism. And if we link it into a journalism CTE program, I mean, there's, they have interests and we just really need to kind of, or not we are going to open up our eyes and look at what has been presented to us.
Good examples. Right.
And that's my update on strategic planning. That didn't take longer than an hour.
I am just real quick. This probably would be a good time to ask, but around the facilities conversation, Mike has been exploring the opportunity for a bond. And so if we want to explore that further, we need a specific work session that's way more than what we could fit into a board meeting. And he's also hired a polling firm to poll and just test the public to see if they are interested in that as well. If we are open to January 25th, can we did you confirm that the polling firm will be present in chat? And then Mike would be reviewing with us the different list of projects that came off of the facilities master plan and the bonds, put that together so that we can understand what we're even talking about. The 25th work for folks. Okay. What time did we say? Did we want to start like at 5? Like we were thinking 6?
I think we're looking at 5:30.
If you wanted to have dinner, I think
Yeah,
we're
talking-
dinner.
yeah. We could be here for a couple hours. When can you start, Tim?
I get done with work at 5:30, so I could possibly be here by 6.
It's about dinner where I'm from.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
And it's possible I could get off work early since it isn't that often, so I can accommodate it.
Well, we can stick with 6. Yeah, I think that's fine. All right, why don't you schedule in January 25th at 6 p.m. for a work session? We'll talk about the project list for the bond and hear from the polling company, polling firm, what they discovered. Okay,
January 25th, 6 o'clock.
yep, you got it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, board member visits to schools. I saw that you sent out an email with the current scheduled visits. Is there any other updates you wanted to provide us?
I just wanted to say it's not too late if you want to
Okay.
get in there.
I was starting to email you that I had a little crisis today, so I'm gonna tack on to a couple of those, I think.
Yeah,
Sure.
anything you see there, any, or other weeks coming up.
Yeah, it's the same day.
Trying to let me know, and, we'll get you settled in there, but you can see what's already been scheduled, and if you can pitch on, that's great, if you don't want to, or you can't, that's fine.
Okay.
You know, we'll figure it out.
Are you comfortable with us just showing up, or should we let you know in advance?
Let me know so I can, let the principals know who they're expecting.
Okay, got it.
And make sure we don't have a forum.
No quorum, yeah, no more than 3.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And there's-
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. New business, I know I asked for a motion when Tony and Sherry were here, since we were on that topic, so I changed the agenda without approval. Thanks for just letting me roll with that. It was, I just kind of wanted to wrap it up. All right, so we are on to the next item, which is Lowell School District has a student that wants to be able to join our golf team. And so we just need to be able to approve a partnership or a sponsorship is what it's called, but it feels like a partnership with those that student can do what they want. Do you want to add anything more? Mike?
Just the opportunity for a kid to come in and join our team, give them that, engagement, relationship building and that camaraderie that helps, I think, with all people when they're young and wanting acceptance and participation and all that stuff. And so we've done this, did you mention we did this before with tennis? Yeah, the tennis and, thing. And I'm all for it.
Yeah.
It's great, kid.
I move to approve the collective sponsorship golf, boys golf with Lowell School.
Second.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm for helping any kid explore what they want to explore, so this is fantastic. Any other questions about this? All right, all in favor? Raise a hand, fantastic, that is unanimous.
I did say, that Jeff is okay with it. Okay,
Yeah, Brandon's been
okay.
working.
All right, we have 2 budget committee vacancies. In order to post those to recruit, we just need a motion so that we can recruit for 2 vacancies.
I move to approve the posting of 2 budget committee.
Thank you. All right, so we'll get that done through the normal route that we normally do. Mira takes care of all that for us, so we'll post the way we normally have. And I think probably our most successful recruiting tool is getting out and asking folks. So if you see folks that are interested, please give them a call and ask them. It's not necessarily a lot of time commitment. Just as a reminder, there's typically 1 budget update Mike does to the board before the process starts, like around March or April. We invite the budget committee so they have a little bit of background, and then there's typically 1, occasionally a second meeting in May, but typically at least 1.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is it the same kind of requirements for like a school board position? Do they have to, like, if they live in the area but not like out of way, out of town? Does that, like, where does that boundary kind of lie? Like, I know some people who live down at Links Hollow, for example.
Do they have to reside within the school district, Maryland?
Yeah, do they?
I
Okay.
think they do.
And that is cut off in there, right?
I think Links Hollow, one side is in and one side is out.
Okay.
It's one of those boundary roads.
Okay.
If you give me an address, I can tell you which school district.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious, like, I know some people who live on the outskirts and they're like, oh, I don't know if I'm eligible to like even try to be a part of the board or something like that, 'cause I think I'm not in the area. So I was just curious if it was the same kind of criteria.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think they have to live within because it's their taxpayer dollars that they're.
It's in the
voting on.
district, so I'm pretty sure they probably live on the right side of the road.
If they're on the Creswell side, they're on the right.
All right. All right, there's an information school board appreciation. Thank you very much for all the cards and the notes. That's very nice. Very nice.
Well, I just want to tell you, it's our favorite month of the year where we get to say thank you to you, and we don't hear it enough. But as a district, I mean, we really do appreciate what you do for us. I mean, you do this out of the kindness of your heart. We know it's not your career, it's not, but you're making it happen for this community. So we, the Creswell District staff and students, appreciate each of you for your service to our Creswell community. Thank you for taking precious time away from your families, hobbies, work, activities, and sometimes even your vacations to be with us and do this work. It's very important work. We couldn't do it without you. Our kids thrive because of you. Your endless support makes the Creswell School District a great place to be for both employees and our students. Thank you. And then we have a small certificate of appreciation for you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Marilyn. I'm sure you had a hand in the certificate. I haven't really done it from your knee. Yeah. Like,
You have to give me a little hard time. I don't, yeah.
Oh, not normal.
Oh, yeah.
We saw the cards and that, this is from.
I love it, that tiger blood dripping over the O.
And David B is really happy about it.
He's really happy. I really like first. I know.
We'll see, and there's this big one too, Brent, that is all signed by all the grades. These people. Oh, it's very cute. If you open it like first, second, third, fourth, they're all his phones. So you can see the progression of handwriting actually. You'd like to see what it looks like in first grade. No, we're doing great things here.
Some of the little guys, I noticed they had drawings.
Yeah.
With their
They did,
name.
yeah.
And they had hearts or whatever.
Thank you.
And one of them drew something I didn't know what it was. He was so happy to draw something for you. It's in there.
I read with kindergartners on Friday mornings, and that is the biggest motivator. If you finish your O's, your uppercase and your lowercase, I'll let you drop them in. They like get right to it. Not after Mighty Mustangs, they want to color. They are super fun. Okay. All right, thank you for the note and thank you for all of this. This is super fun. Okay, Division 22 standards. This is kind of the catch-all standards, and we need to be able to, do we approve this?
No,
Or
this
you
is-
just need to report this, that you're meeting all the standards?
No, I reported to you early on, or when this was due, when I submitted it, that we were in compliance, and ODE has now reviewed it, and this is a letter of approval that we are in compliance with the Division 22 standards, which I believe incorporate 100 and something standards.
They just haven't changed the rate.
Oh.
22, so we have division 102 standard.
Yeah, there's a ton of them in there, and keep adding them every year. But we're keeping up with them. Oh my gosh, I'll tell you.
Okay, thank you for keeping us compliant. and all of your administration team, that's really good.
Yeah, it has everything to do with the entire district. Mhm.
Okay, and the next item, again, is informational. It is our audit.
Yeah, so I am pleased to say for the third year in a row, third year. Since Chanel come on, we passed the audit and flying colors. I mean, it's just, we get the highest rating from them and compliments that they can give, really as auditors. I don't really know what their vocabulary is like, because they're all numbers. Sometimes I don't really understand what they're saying. It's a compliment, but I don't really understand some of their lingo, but they do, they really do pass on good compliments for Chanel and the operations of the district and the way she's keeping the books and stuff for us going. No compliance issues, no report issues, and everything is on time with their timeline. So.
Thanks, Chanel, we appreciate you. It's an important one, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Any questions on the audit?
Oh, we've got two things going here. We got, hey, we're doing all the school stuff, and hey, we got all of our accounts in. We're operating.
Yeah, and thank you for keeping us in compliance and operational. All right, inter-district transfer caps.
Oh, just wanted to remind you that we have a policy in the district. We agreed on this several years ago. That we are open to transfers through the first semester, second semester is coming up. And so we will be closed for the second semester. So unless there's some kind of a hardship from another district, we've made an exception for a couple of kids and accepted demand when they were in pretty dire hardships in their current placement. And we're always open to that to help them out. But in general, we're closed to transfers coming in. When you accept transfers at late in the year, they're not included in your account for funding for the next year. So you're really looking at 2 years out to recover that. And we don't get many requests anyway. Usually they are the hardship. Just so you know.
For the future, with the strategic plan, you might be getting a lot of requests. So
Yeah.
it's good that we have that role in place, right?
We're gonna be, yeah, we wanna be happening. We wanna be the happening place.
Okay, Oregon Government Ethics Commission, so there's a new law that states that board members, like many other elected officials, had to do before, superintendents have to do, many kind of CEO positions that governments have to do. They have to file a statement of economic interest, which indicates if you have an outside business or other economic things happening, to disclose them in case there's a potential, conflict of interest. So Marilyn has become our expert in this new law, has attended trainings. And Marilyn, I'm gonna turn it over to you. You gave us some paperwork ahead of time.
I did. I guess my main question, well, I'll explain first of all why I'm involved. I got an email from the Ethics Commission saying I was appointed to be the jurisdictional contact for the school district. It sounds more important than what it is.
Yeah.
And based on my responsibility is to see board members in the economic database and keep it up to date. And so I guess my question is, did you all receive an email from the Economic Commission this week? And they're inviting you to open your own account. And that's something you would do. I would not do that for you. If you have any questions, please let me know and I will get help for you. Some important dates are the filing window is March 15th through April 15th. You cannot file before March 15th. But I'll remind you. Yes, and the other thing that they stressed was that please check your email on a constant basis, because it sounds like they're gonna be sending out a lot of messages. And don't ignore them. And it's very important that you file by April 15th, because if you don't, there are fines. And it doesn't matter what day of the week April 15th is on, it could be on a Saturday. You know, it's not like, you know, the IRS says, oh, you know, it's on the Silver Monday, no. 15th is a good one.
Okay, so file our taxes and our economic
There you
statement.
go.
on April 15th.
Yeah.
Okay,
So they're gonna provide trainings, economic, and provide training in March and April. And I downloaded and printed for you some information here, and if you'd like to just read it, or if you've got questions, please let me know. There's a lot to go through. I'm still learning.
It said something, I think in the email about like community college, ESD, you don't have to report, is that correct? Did I read it correctly? So for me working for the university, is that excluded
Well-
or is it-
No, because you're a board member here in the school district, you will have to.
okay.
so
I
they
see.
don't have to, they're.
They don't have to, they're, got it, okay, I misread that.
Like ESC board members do not have to,
Okay, got it,
but elected school board members have to.
okay, I see.
So that's kind of it in a nutshell. There's a lot to read. I'm still reading. I read it over a couple, 3 times. There's a lot there. So if you have any problems setting up your account, please let me know.
Okay, so you'll send us like an all caps reminder, March 15th, systems open. Can we create an account ahead of time?
Yes, you can now.
Okay, so we can create our account ahead of time. We can't file anything until March 15th.
Right.
Yeah, I created the bank account today, one, but do
Okay.
anything, but it's not going there.
Okay, perfect,
So
perfect. Okay, all
I'm
right.
keeping track.
Thank you. Thank you for being our expert in keeping track of this for us.
Oh, you're welcome. Something new to learn.
Yeah, I'm sure there's all kinds of things you'd probably rather learn.
Oh, that's interesting, actually.
Great. Okay, last item is actually a question. Debbie asked a great question in the leadership meeting. Can we move our board time up an hour so that we can get out of here a little bit earlier? And we can set our own time. So, does a 6 o'clock start time work for most people? How do you guys feel about that? Most of the time?
I think it's great.
Okay. Tim,
One day a month means I don't get dinner until afterwards, but I can do it.
Okay. Okay. We'll get you home sooner.
So if we move it up an hour, that means Mike's gonna bring us dinner.
Okay, why don't we try 6 o'clock next for the February meeting? That'll be fantastic.
Oh,
You're gonna see your wife. Yeah.
Going back to like, we would do a gender and we just, again, we're gonna do a 6 o'clock instead. Perfect.
Yeah, I think it's really up to the leadership team, Stephanie and Linda, but we just didn't want to move it because it's been at 7 for so long. And we can move it around every month, we can move it around every year. It's just one of those things that really hasn't risen up to a question, so I appreciated Debbie asking, because I think that all.
I think for my first meeting, I showed up at 6 o'clock. 3 years ago, but it's still, I was like here, I'm like, what are you doing here? Like,
That felt late to me.
it felt like, it felt like, it makes me-
Yeah, we'll all appreciate getting to know them. So, okay, all right, we'll start at 6 o'clock on February. In February. Okay.
Google says we're good to go.
Yeah, I have it right there.
Okay, good. All right. Trustee reports. Is there anything, Mike, we'll start with you. Anything you want to share for trustee report?
About the only thing I've done is the other day we went to a basketball game, girls, boys, baby, and varsity, and that was fun. It seemed like a pretty good turnout for both women.
Good.
That was fun to be part of that.
Mary, anything you want to share?
I've been to, I think, 5 basketball games, primarily because I drive the Bulldog, and then I just stay. To support the kids too. But yeah, I've been, I'm keeping up, and because he's right, it's fun when you get there, it's kind of like, you want to go back, because it's kind of fun to watch the kids progress, and so, yeah, basketball has been the thing over Christmas break.
Awesome. Mark? Okay, Candace?
I too made it to a couple basketball games, and I went to wrestling tonight. Yes, it was very fun. I'd been to wrestling meet in a long time, so it was nice. I feel like that's really fun.
Well, we have the holidays, so there's not a lot.
Is there gonna be more wrestling?
I think that that is our only home duel of
Really?
tonight.
I
Yeah.
saw it.
You know that there's a middle school duel on next, I feel like it's next Wednesday after middle. So there's a middle school, I did get a chance to go to one of those, it's actually very fun. We have a huge middle school. So,
They were there tonight.
yeah,
They
yeah,
got a lot.
you know what, so, yeah.
Only have 2 things. January 4th was steering committee meeting, funding. And January 10th, yesterday was a one-on-one with Amy.
I got a little bit of basketball last night. I was working in concessions, so I was kind of bouncing in and out. So Candace did pretend to like want to work in concessions last night. She just didn't stay.
They said they didn't need me, so I wasn't gonna.
It's fine. I've been working in concessions a lot. That's what I do in my free time. And then I did the steering committee meeting, and I did go to that wrestling meet, which I encourage you to go to. It's super fun. And then leadership. So, that's that.
Fantastic. I was happy to get back to reading with the kindergartners on Friday morning with IRC. They are so sweet. There's one little boy, I swear he's my favorite. I think my kids hear me talk about him. And they're like, are you just gonna bring him home one day? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, he draws, when we are done, he draws pictures of me and him holding hands. So he like is totally in my heart. So love that. And all of them were super happy to be back. Yeah. Yeah, I think the first thing I heard from like a dozen of them, we haven't seen you for like 2 weeks. Oh, so they just loved being back, which made me super happy for them to be back too. Yeah.
Something, right, sorry, are you?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about it.
Something I should have mentioned, about mid-December, I went to a football referees retiree luncheon, and I was talking to the commissioner of the football and basketball referees. And he said that our AD was an excellent guy to work with. He really had lots of kudos to say about it. He said he knew, especially during COVID, the schedule changes and all that stuff, but he said that Brandon, he's really a good guy to work with.
Love the positive feedback.
Yeah, just for what it's worth, he's a good guy.
I didn't go to basketball games, you can hold the baby.
Yeah.
That is funny. Yeah, that's funny. Right. Oh, one other thing, I started, we do every January, but we start teaching a budgeting class for families. So if there's anybody that you know that would just love a chance to understand a little bit more about money management, how to get out of debt, have them email me. We just started on Sunday night. It's a 9-week course, and it's fantastic. We use the same curriculum that actually the school uses that we put our seniors through. So it's very consistent. Happy to get people in. So, okay. Yeah, all right. Next is our book, our really long chapter. Chapter 3. I believe it was chapter 3. How are folks still liking the book? Did you guys read it before the holidays and don't remember? Okay. this chapter, the previous chapter was what to teach. It was focused on curriculum. This chapter is about how to teach, which, you know, obviously doesn't go into all the nuts and bolts that teachers have to know, but it focused on like this repetitive cycle that was like a stair stepping at the same time. So here's our instructional goal, a hook, right? Just like what they're teaching the kids when they write essays. I heard my daughter all the time, I have a hook, what would you think of a good hook, right? To get people to read it, same thing. They need a hook in order to excite the kids on what they're learning. They do short little 5-minute lectures or, you know, some way to give the instructions, but in very short segments. I thought that was interesting. And then a check for understanding, right? And there's many different ways that they talk for the check for understanding and then back at it, like reteach it or do next stair step of the next little piece. I actually really liked it. And I was talking with some of our high schoolers about the importance of just like, can we have more reading? Can we have more writing? I had parent teacher conferences today with my son. And so when we were talking through some of the lessons, I was asking them some of the information. I didn't say I'm reading a book. And I didn't want to offend them, but I did want, I was curious. And, you know, several of the teachers were like, yeah, I don't like the kids reading on the laptop. I want them reading a textbook. I want them, you know, they want to do Control F, just find me the answer. So when they give them the hard copy, it forces them to read. That's great. Yeah. Because if it's a hard copy, they just Control F and get around it. And those teachers really work on it. So. What were other takeaways from the book? If that person was, did I get that summary right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you obeyed the 5-minute.
Yay for me. I want a gold star.
Like on the helmet.
One of the things that I wrote down like a while ago when I was doing this was it seems like effective instruction would lead to better classroom management. I just kept like that kept resonating with me. Like if you were using this model, I feel like classroom management would be so much easier because you're right, you just kind of repeat that cycle. Like so if they don't understand it, you go back. Right, and you can re-engage them, which I was like, that seems really smart to me, because I mean, if we look at the broad scope of what a classroom looks like today, after post-COVID, all the things we talked about, you know, I was like, I can see how this could be really impactful in bridging gaps, right? So to me, that was one of the weird takeaways, I guess, if I was reading.
No, I think that's a brilliant takeaway. I think they were even talking about that is like when one of the approaches for a teacher was they didn't move on until they had all the eyes on them and literally put all the desks, you know, facing the teacher. And I was thinking, okay, all the behavior problems that we have now post-COVID that we didn't have before, I don't know how, you know, how much teachers are struggling with that. But if you really do have everybody focused and following along.
Well, I think like last time we talked, one of the things that I brought up was like, I kept asking, how can this be implemented at the high school? I get elementary, I get middle school, but I kept saying like, that was kind of my takeaway in the first couple of chapters. And then it was explained how it is. And I was like, okay, that totally makes sense. And then with this, I was like, you know, when you're in front of a group of high schoolers, just all of them looking at you or making a gesture doesn't really work anymore, right? It's out the door. Like they're like, yeah, whatever. You're not gonna fight KOE or right? But you're trying. But the thing is that with this model, the way you're engaging them and then looping back to it, you don't even need to do that. And I was like, oh wow, I can totally see where this kind of solidifies not only like the fact that you have the engagement, but now you also have that check-in to make sure that they're understanding it. So I don't know, there were pieces in there to me that like really made a lot of sense for for high schoolers specifically, like, again, I don't know why it always seems like this makes more sense in elementary and middle to me, like, cause that's like the first lens, I kind of go through all the grades as I'm reading it and thinking about that. That's good, so, that's my big takeaway.
Any other thoughts? I actually had a question, Mike, which was, they talk about one of the fads being intervention. And this RTI, and why am I drawing a blank on the RTI? Oh, response to intervention. So we have things that we have programs and assistance that we have termed intervention. Is that the same thing that they're talking about?
They're talking about that, and you can, it depends on how you're using it though within your instructional model, because you can, it's not a replacement for what happened in a lesson plan. RTI is a response to a student who is failing or struggling. And so if you're using it as an instructional model, it's not an instructional model, it's a support model. And so, you know, the sales pitch on it is this will fix them. Well, no, it's the higher quality instruction teaching that really takes care of all the important skills and the learning that's to be taught. RTI is only going to support that when it's used effectively, for students when they're struggling with something in the curriculum or learning.
Do you think that this teaching model would reduce over time the need or the amount of the need for RTI?
Well, there's always going to be some students who need some intervention and support, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So because they have gaps in their learning from wherever it developed, before they came to us or somewhere along their K-12 journey, they develop gaps because, you know, we don't retain students if they don't master the grade level learning, right? We don't, because that's more detrimental to them emotionally than moving them forward and then trying to provide the intervention or supports as they go forward in their progression from grade level to grade level. So there's always going to be room. There's a place for intervention and supports. You just have to have them. But that's not what you rely on to get students learning. You rely on the quality of instruction and how they approach teaching to students. And so higher levels of engagement in the classroom, even those students that have gaps, they're going to pick up on the learning because they're totally engaged with that teacher. And the teacher is delivering where they can meet the kid. All kids, whatever level they're at. They have their tool bag, you know, what do their stated objectives, so students know where they're going. But the question at the high school is why am I learning? And so stating the objective to them, this is what you're going to learn today, this is why. This is where it's going in the real world for application, kind of thing. And then seeing that objective is living through the lesson. So we're focused on this. We're not veering off to the right or to the left. We're focused on getting to this objective to master it today. This is the lesson. These are the skills and the knowledge that you need to capture today. And then a check-in at the end of the class. Where were you with this? If 70% of you met the objective, okay, you're going to move on, but 30% of you, as a teacher, I'm going to go back, loop back to you to get you up to or we need you to master that objective to move forward. So there's the stated objective, there's the living objective, and then there's the check-in on achieving the objective for every lesson. So you know where your kids are. And when you look back in.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, especially when it talked about the groups, like the amount of time of group work. I don't know. I found that really fascinating, and then to check back in and like just the application of that, which kind of goes back to like, yeah, makes a lot of sense.
the thing that keeps them engaged and get away from it, and you know, in the elementary school, their attention span is like, not
Yeah.
7 days.
10 seconds, man, you uppercase O's.
7 minutes. You get into the fourth, fifth grade, and then as you progress into middle school, it's maybe stretching it to 11 minutes. And then 20 minutes is the maximum that the person can hold their attention and retain 80% of the information that you're teaching them. So you have change-ups in the class, something of how you're changing the environment or groups, maybe I'm lecturing for 10 minutes and then I'm going to say, okay, I want you to now turn to your partner and share with your partner what your thoughts are on it. And then I want one of you to report out to another pair, and the four of you have a discussion, and maybe we'll do that for 10 minutes, and then we come back to the lecture piece. And when we come back to the lecture piece, maybe I'm teaching from that board, the blue pen, when I started it on that board with a green pen. There are different change of strategies to stimulate the brain to tune in and engage to what's coming. But if you're standing in front of them for 40 minutes, 20 minutes, they're gone. They're getting 30% of the information rather than maximum 80%.
I teach a lot of adults and it's the same. And I actually use a similar method to this when I'm training and teaching with adults. So yeah, it's like an introduction, they go through and then there's follow-up and then we check back and see if they learn. So I think it would work, but yeah, even adults, I think we have a short attention span. I don't think that.
Brain stimulation that's not, we all know that. We know that because that's where we are. We know that we're kids. So why put them through that if we know that you have to have change-ups to engage them and move them, do all those activities. Amy Guerra, she's an expert at that stuff. She knows. What Malachi is really getting it today. People walking in every classroom. Hey, guess what? Hey, I know about this stuff. Yeah.
He's gonna call out every teacher that lectures more than 5 minutes now. Did you know? It is not approved. We need a regular on your schedule. Yeah. Thinking about that long run now. Be on. Change.
Yeah, and we had lots of Sheldon was every 20-minute interval. There was a change up going on in the dynamics. They had a break in the middle of the class for 5 minutes, and then they came back and there was a lot of movement going on, but active engagement is what you're after. And it doesn't matter if it's a 70-minute class, a 90-minute class, or a 50-minute class. You're going to have to kind of change up to re-engage them after that. That duration expires. Attention.
Okay, any other thoughts on the book and chapter? Okay, we'll talk about chapter 4 next week and next month. I'm so sorry. February is at 6. We have a big work session at the 20 on the 25th. Okay. I think we are done.